Turns out it wasn't just the outsourcing of Trump's ground game that has hurt his get out the vote effort. It's also the app that they're using that keeps crashing, and it could really make a difference in the election. Let's discuss. I'm Dave Aronberg, state attorney for Palm Beach County, aka the Florida Law Man, here on the MeidasTouch Network. So we've been talking in previous videos about how the Kamala Harris Get Out the Vote campaign, the ground game, if you will, is superior to Donald Trump's. They've invested money, they've invested time and efforts, and they have this going on in all the swing states. Meanwhile, Trump has outsourced it to groups like Charlie Kirk's group, which is a political group for young right-wingers with all their controversial comments and actions. And now there's supposed to be some dedicated, sophisticated get out the vote effort. Politics is a science when it comes to getting your people out, chasing down absentee ballots, trying to encourage low propensity voters to go out and vote. And if you're going to outsource it to people who are just radical advocates, who are your talking heads, that is a recipe for disaster. You know, the people who are the loudest voices on TV, like Charlie Kirk, don't necessarily know what they're doing when it comes to a sophisticated get out the vote effort. And it's showing. And this is one of those underreported stories because people focus on the polls. They focus on the 1% leads and the narrowing leads for Kamala Harris when, look, if it's an even race going into election day, I like our chances when you have a ground game that is far superior. And according to The Guardian, which just came out with a story that details that it's not just the outsourcing of the ground game that's the problem, it's also the app that they're using. And yes, there is an Elon Musk connection here. According to The Guardian, Donald Trump's campaign has limited ability to know whether their ground game operation is reaching target voters in battleground states, as the software being used needs fast internet service to properly track canvassers, according to multiple people familiar with the situation. Now, keep in mind, this report is coming from people within the Trump campaign, people who are out there getting paid to canvass door to door to try to find these key voters who are supposed to be the key in electing Donald Trump. Remember, in just about every poll you see, Kamala Harris does better when it comes to likely voters. When it comes to registered voters, though, Trump seems to do somewhat better than he does with likely voters because some of his voters, the key ones that he expects to put him over the top, are people who are not likely to vote. They're people who don't normally vote. They're people who are low information voters, people who are not voters who you can count on. So you got to drag them to the polls. They're the people who don't watch mainstream news or even the MeidasTouch Network. I can't imagine there are people who don't watch the MeidasTouch Network, but there are people who don't. Instead, they watch right-wing podcasts meant for incels. That's the type of voters who they are trying to target. Some of them are in rural communities, hard to find. Others you got to find in their parents' basement playing video games all day. But the one common denominator is that the people who are in charge of finding them and getting to the polls are not necessarily good at it. And if they are good at it, the app that they're using to find them is terrible and it keeps crashing. And we know that because the people who are the workers, the volunteers, and the ones getting paid keep complaining about it. The Trump campaign and the Elon Musk-backed America PAC, which is now doing an outsized portion of the Trump ground game, use a management app called Campaign Sidekick that struggles in areas with slow internet and means canvassers have to use an offline version. The Campaign Sidekick app effectively forces canvassers who have less than 40 megabits per second of internet, sufficient to stream 4K video, to use offline walkbooks, which have no geo-tracking feature and do not always upload after a route is completed, the people said. Yeah, so you have to have enough internet to stream 4K video. This is what they're counting on in their app and that app only. And they have to have it in rural areas like in rural Pennsylvania and in other areas where just the internet's not that good. As the article says, as a result, the Trump campaign and America PAC then have little way to know whether canvassers are actually knocking on doors or whether they're cheating, for instance, by speed running routes where they literally throw campaign materials at doors as they drive past. America PAC has tried to deter cheating by sending out teams of auditors to trail canvassers. Nothing like the trust you have with your campaign team who really doesn't want to be there or is there just to do it for money. But there is no way to directly audit every offline walkbook, which is particularly high because of the Trump campaign's focus on hitting low propensity voters. And even when canvassers legitimately complete a route offline, that data has sometimes failed to upload afterwards, the people said. Since the canvassers are paid by the door, they have to redo their work, wasting time and potentially annoying voters for harassing them twice. Quote, maybe Elon Musk can give his canvassers a Starlink, one political operative involved with the America PAC operation joked, referring to Musk's satellite-based mobile internet router. Yeah, this is so typical of Elon Musk getting involved, who's got all the money in the world, no political know-how, and thinks, hey, we're going to help Ron DeSantis launch his campaign through a Twitter space when it collapsed under the weight of the users and was a huge embarrassment. This is the kind of thing when they do the questions and answers with Donald Trump, it crashes. And now the thing he's paying for, this canvassing operation using this app that only they use, is crashing again. And so all the money in the world doesn't buy you political know-how, and it doesn't buy you passionate supporters who will walk on glass to help your person get elected, like Kamala Harris, when you're depending on paid canvassers who are being paid through Charlie Kirk's organization or through other third-party organizations and not the Trump campaign themselves. Yeah, you got to start chasing after them, make sure they're not just driving by throwing literature at someone's door. You got to make sure they're doing the work. And even if they're doing the work, the app crashes, so they got to visit homes twice, which annoys their voters. And so the whole thing is a mess. And if you don't think this matters in a close election, think again. And that's why the people on the inside are complaining about it. They see it's slipping away. And in fact, this problematic app is nothing new. The Trump campaign has fielded complaints about Sidekick for some time, the people said. At least 2 other super PACs involved in doing ground game work on behalf of the Trump campaign in battleground states have stopped using it for their own operations. Those wider complaints include the app crashing during peak hours when there are many people using it at once, or tech glitches like the Google Maps preview in the app, which is there for canvassers to figure out their routes, being broken. There have been complaints about campaign Sidekick from other groups as well. Turning Point Action, run by the right-wing activist Charlie Kirk, told the Trump campaign they encountered so many difficulties that they would use their own app in Arizona and Wisconsin and parts of Michigan. Yes, so the Trump campaign could take solace knowing that Charlie Kirk, who's a right-wing activist, not a political scientist, has their own app because the campaign Sidekick app that the campaign is giving them doesn't work. So yes, just trust the conspiracy theorist, ultra right-winger living in his world of alternate facts to get it done right. And why are they still using this problematic app? Well, the Trump campaign took over the RNC in March and directed America PAC to use the app in part because the Trump team was already using it itself. Remember, this is part of the Trump takeover of the RNC. Laura Trump, his daughter-in-law, is in charge. This is what happens when you dedicate all your resources to your party's leader, the party of one, Donald Trump, and you start firing the professionals. You bring in your family, and they're demanding that you use the same app that the Trump campaign has used. Well, the thinking is, or at least was at the time, that it would be easier to analyze the data if it all came through the same system, a Trump official said. But there have been political considerations as well. The Trump campaign decided not to use other platforms such as I-360 Walk, partly as a result of distrust with its owners, the Koch brothers, who've opposed Trump in the past. One of the people said, it's bad when you don't trust the Koch brothers, some of the richest Republicans who have been active in previous campaigns, and you just think they're going to sabotage Trump's campaign. So you say, no, we're not using your app. We'd rather use this app that has so many bugs that even Charlie Kirk's group won't use it anymore. Well, what about that app that Ron DeSantis used? Because remember, he had a massive get out the vote operation. It failed, but he had a massive operation. He used a different app from Advantage Inc. Well, they decided, the Trump campaign, not to use that app. Why? Because DeSantis used it. Yeah, he still has a lot of mistrust towards Ron DeSantis. And so they're going to go their own way, no matter how many votes it costs them. That's the price of being stubborn. So look, no campaign is perfect. There are always issues in a campaign, but it seems like the Trump campaign has more issues than anyone else. And we'll see if it matters in November. I think it will. I think in a close race that the ground game matters. There is a reason why Harris has been investing so much in it. And these are the types of things that are not really fully understood until after an election is over, because you don't really see all the stuff that's going on the ground. You see it on Twitter. I'm not going to call it by its other name. You see it by the posts on Threads. You see by the social media of those canvassers who are getting a great response. You see it in the data where it shows that the early vote in the swing states, meaning the mail-in voting plus any early voting that goes on, has been heavily favoring Democrats. But that's no guarantee of what goes on at the end of the day on November 5th. We expect that there'll be a larger turnout on Election Day on November 5th by the Republicans, but the Democrats are building up a large enough firewall that it could withstand any late surge by those red voters. So you don't want to be the party that relies on Election Day to get your vote in. You want to bank those votes in advance. You want to create that firewall. You don't want to rely on the vagaries of Election Day to overcome a massive deficit in your vote, because if you rely on Election Day voting alone, well, a lot of things can happen. Long lines, bad weather, car trouble for your supporters, mix-ups going to the wrong polls, just problems at work. Any reason that you don't vote on that day, you're putting a lot of stock in getting everyone in to vote on one day if you don't have an effective early vote effort. And if you don't have an effective ground game effort, they may not vote at all. So that is the latest. I'm Dave Aronberg, a.k.a. the Florida Lawman, here on the MeidasTouch Network. If you like this video, please like it, leave a comment below, and share with a friend. Also, check out our sister channel, True Crime MTN, where we cover the hottest true crime cases around the country, such as the trial now of Sarah Boone, the woman who locked her boyfriend in a suitcase and left him to die. I know it's morbid stuff, but it is pretty fascinating. And the trial, of course, occurs in Florida.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.